617-282-0062. I'm listening. I'm so listening. Personally, watching the movie, I think I cried 2 times. I cried when the wife was raped, and I cried when they played that Nina Simone Strange Fruit, and there was 6, 7 hanging from the tree. Those are the 2 parts that, I got really emotional at. But I was a little upset because where is the historical context? Where? Outside of, as far as Nat Turner's story is concerned, where was the historical context? It was lacking. It definitely was lacking. And I posted that I was going to see it. And some people like, yo, save your money, don't waste your time. And I kind of understand why people feel like that. The man did not even give himself up. They found him. They could at least show that they went on a manhunt for him, not that he surrendered himself. Why would the man surrender himself? I get it. I get it. I get it. I wish there was more historical context, though. Other than that, I want to give a huge shout out to my cousin Darlene, or Titi Dala, who nominated me 2 days ago, 3 days ago, today's day 3, who nominated me 3 days ago for the 22 push-up challenge in 22 days. What does that mean? It means that I'm horribly not in shape, cannot do a push-up. I have to do them on my knees. But there are 22 veterans that commit suicide every single day. So every day while you and I look to the sky and say, thank you for waking me up, there are 22 veterans that say, I can't do this anymore. I can't cope anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I feel horrible for the things that I did in my past. I can't live with the things that I've seen. And they take their lives. 22 every single day. So every day for the next 20 days, 19. For the next 19 days, I will be engaging in this 22 push-up challenge for 22 days. And I have to nominate somebody every day. So Anari was my first nomination. Paula was my second nomination. And if you desire to be nominated, just inbox me, baby. I have nobody else, because I'm thinking of like all of my friends, everybody that I love. Who else can I nominate? And they're like, Tayla, come see me in the gym. I'll do my push-ups in the gym. But I really do believe that this is an amazing cause to bring awareness to veterans and suicide prevention. And I thank those that have served their country for us, that have died for us, that mentally struggle and can't deal. Thank you. We kind of take for granted just how blessed we truly are. A step towards limitless energy on Earth. MIT, yes, we are international, baby, as far as this news is concerned. MIT's fusion reactor sets a new world record for plasma pressure. I have no idea what this means at all. Not going to pretend like I do. Fusion reactors could provide an unlimited source of clean energy. MIT scientists have smashed a previous record for plasma pressure. Pressure was increased by 15% more than the previous record. Pressure is needed for the atomic fusion reactors to take place in the reactors. The result push the technology further towards a viable energy source. Hey, Auntie Anna, if you know I know nothing about fusion, I know nothing about reactors. Scientists are looking to nuclear fusion as a potential limitless source of clean energy. It works on the same principle as the reactors inside the sun's core, nuclear fusion. Using intense heat, magnetic fields, and pressure, hydrogen atoms are fused together to create heavier atoms of helium, releasing energy in the process. The MIT team achieved pressure of 2.05 atmospheres, breaking the previous record by 15%. Within a volume of just 1 square meter, the temperature inside the reactor reached more than 35 million degrees Celsius, or 63 million degrees Fahrenheit, with trillions of fusion reactors taking place each second. Again, I have no idea what that means, but it sounds like we're moving towards clean energy. But at the same time, I remember living near a power plant that did this, and it was just like, listen, and there's signs all over the city. If this thing goes awry, go into the city. I remember that. Frank, good rising. But I don't know. Nuclear explosion, I'm scared. But I think this is dope. I think that 63 million degrees Fahrenheit. The hell? I've never even heard of any temperature that high, ever. A high school graduation rate reaches a record high of 83.2%. Hispanic, Black, and Native American student groups have seen the most dramatic strides since 2010 and 2011. President Barack Obama is scheduled to speak about the accomplishment at the Benjamin Banneker High School in Washington, D.C. The high school graduation rates have reached a record high of 83.2%, continuing a steady increase that shows improvements across all ethnic groups. See, I do have a problem with this. Juan Guan, good rising, good rising. The reason why I have a problem with this is because recently I was part of a conversation on a state level, on a state, as far as the state is concerned, I had a conversation that was questioning parents to get some more information. How do you guys feel? What do you want? What do you need? And this was on the Massachusetts state level. When I tell you, I felt like I was in a Mary Kay. I felt like I was on a Mary Kay conference call. You know how when you're in one of those network marketing, prepaid legal, trips for us, all of those little network marketing, that's what I felt like I was. I felt like I was on a network marketing. It had nothing to do with like actual education. It was about the bottom line. It was about making people feel good about their decisions, and it was about testing and the way that we test our students and the way that we test our children and the way that we get these results. So all of these results and all of these numbers are fictitious, and I believe they're fictitious is because when we're over here testing, what these numbers say is we have taught these children how to take these tests, and they are scoring better than they did in 2010 and 2011. That to me is not a measure of education. That to me is not a measure of success. That's not a measure of success. I taught you how to take a damn test. I taught you how to memorize things. Period. Outside of that, I personally don't feel like we are properly educating our children. When you come out of high school and don't know what excise tax is, we are failing you. When you come out of high school and don't know your proper history, we are failing you. When you go to college and everything hits you in the head and you're like, damn, why they didn't tell me this in high school? We're failing you. When you come out of high school and don't know how to put together a checkbook, don't know how to balance a checkbook, don't know how to be mindful of your credit score, we are failing you. So just because these numbers say, and President Barack Obama is speaking on, I personally just want to inform you that these numbers are put together based on our children taking these damn tests, and that's why I have no problem as a parent telling you as parents that your child does not need to take the PARC, they don't need to take the MCAS, and all these other tests that your children have to take every 6 weeks to assess them. If you feel like your child needs assessment, then go ahead and let your child take that test. Or if you have a Nari and Asaria type kids that just want to be number one in the class, go on and let them take the test. But you have a right as a parent to say, no, my child will not be tested, period. In case you didn't know, go do your due diligence. Now, as far as that 10th grade MCAS, your child cannot graduate from high school without that 10th grade MCAS. That's across the board that everybody has to take that. But that 3rd grade, that 5th grade, that 6th grade, that 7th grade, all them tests that they have to take every 6 to 8 weeks, your child does not have to go through that stress. And while we're talking about education, because you know that's the soapbox that I stand on, as far as education is concerned, if you have a point that you want to go to your child's school and show up and show out and support, but you can't because you have to work, City Councilor Charles Yancey implemented many moons ago that parents can take 3 days off to attend their child's or children's school activities. If you didn't know, now you know. And as far as voting is concerned, you have 2 hours. Don't let your employer tell you otherwise. You have 2 hours to leave work and go ahead and vote and come back. I got tongue-tied. Jamion said they need to be teaching finance in high school. I believe you. VCR, good rising all the way from Dubai. Yes, I love it, baby. I love it. Pepsi. I think this story is hilarious. So Pepsi is trying to target the whole, less sugar, cutting back on fat. So PepsiCo is setting its goal to reduce sugar in 2/3 of its drinks. Not all of them, just 2/3 of them, by 2025. Baby, why you think? Because you could take the sugar out of these mugs today. You could take the sugar out of them today, 2016, in all of them. By 2025, at least 2/3 of Pepsi's drinks will have 100 calories or fewer from added sugar per 12-ounce serving. And that's up from the previous goal of 40%. The New York-based soda company made the announcement yesterday. The soda companies such as Pepsi have increasingly been blamed for the obesity epidemic. It's not just them. You have to understand that high fructose corn syrup is more addictive than crack cocaine. If you don't believe me, do your due diligence. They fed a rat crack cocaine and then fed the rat high fructose corn syrup. Do you want to know where the rat continued to go? Not to the addictive drug that we see zombies down the street on, but kept going back to the damn sugar. I want you to pay attention to how these lab animals look and are treated. Of course, I care deeply about animal cruelty, but aside from that, I want you to take a look at some of the rats that have been fed genetically modified corn, or some of the rats that have been fed Monsanto germinated seed. I want you to be mindful, because how these foods affect these lab animals, or how these foods affect you, how these foods affect your children. I was recently talking to a listener. I want to call him a friend. I was recently talking to a friend who told me that in his native country, there is skyrockets of people with cancer. Never before on his island has there ever been these record numbers of cancer. And the reason why people are, I can't really say obtaining cancer, but it's because of their lifestyle. It's because of what they're eating, the food that they eat. So instead of everybody being farmers, instead of everybody growing their own produce, now everybody's going to everybody's going to fast food businesses instead of going back to the farm and picking out your lettuce, your tomatoes, pickles, and cucumbers. Like, it's ridiculous. And if you really look at the numbers, since 1973, and it was 1973 where that switch over from the our conventional ways of farming to the Monsanto way of farming. I'll talk about Monsanto all day. If you don't know, please go do your due diligence. When there is a global fight against Monsanto, it's not just me, baby. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You just don't know facts. Please go look it up. Please do your due diligence. Please understand what processed food does to you. Please understand that high fructose corn syrup is in almost everything. Everything. From the soda you drink. And you think that, oh, Tayla, I only drink ginger ale. Guess what? Please look on the back of these drinks. Why your Gatorade have sodium in it? Why I need salt in my Gatorade? Because it makes you more thirsty and you have to go back for seconds. You better go drink you some coconut water. Is the number one thing, aside from water itself, that can hydrate you. Those electrolytes that all of these sports drinks boast about. Go get you some coconut water. The one with pineapple is my favorite. With that being said, I digressed. I apologize. I'm really passionate when it comes to these things because we don't know. We don't know. When you go to these little corner store, no, not corner store. Well, yeah, when you go to these corner stores, there's nothing healthy about them at all. But what I was going to say is when you go to these health boxes, because they really are, like South End, Codman Square, when, you know, Upham's Corner, when you go to these clinics, they're not telling you to be mindful of high fructose corn syrup. They're saying, just watch your intake of increase your fiber. But what they're not telling you is the important part.
Waters live in Roxbury tonight with the frustration
They're not telling you that you need to go to these farmers markets that are local in your own community, that are in Dudley, that are in Hyde Park, that are in Rosendale, that are in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. Go to these local farmers markets. Get your produce from them. It's local. It's grown locally.
Right after the shooting, cameras here show him leaving the area.
He
appears to have a beard. He's wearing a black helmet and he's driving a black scooter. Now, on Saturday afternoon, a bullet hit a 2-year-old girl sitting in a car here on Winslow Street. Police believe her father, who they say has gang ties, was the intended target. And they say he's not talking.
I want to give my condolences to all of the families that have,
seeing a young baby like that shot, and no one
this weekend and the previous weekend, I don't know what's going on with Boston. I really don't.
A factor, I guess, in worrying
If
about
you know these
retribution.
shooters
But in
out
this particular
here, 'cause
case,
I
it's
already
his
know
daughter,
that
and I
these
think he
cases are
needs
not
to
going to be solved.
try
If you know
and be
these
more, not
shooters,
try, be more cooperative
please
with the police
somebody be a
department
mentor.
and with us.
If you know these little knucklehead children
So plenty
running
of
around
frustration
here
there from the mayor and the
doing
police
God
commissioner,
knows
but
what
again,
that they have
police
no
really
business
hoping
doing,
that these
please be
surveillance
that
pictures
mentor.
lead to
Please
the
reach out.
shooter.
Please have a
But good news in all of
conversation
this, that
with
little
these
girl,
little boys
she's
that are
expected
so
to be
lost.
okay. We are live in Roxbury
These
tonight. John
babies
Atwater,
are so
WCBB News Center 5.
lost. We currently have a caller on the line. Good rising, caller, you're live.
I'm trying to come on the show.
Oh, good rising, good rising. Give me one moment, baby, and I'm coming for you. So we have, you guys know how we do. You know what it is. Waking Up with Tayla Andre, Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 7. Let me go ahead and get our guests situated. I soapboxed it a little bit too long there. My apologies, my apologies. Sorry, not sorry, because these are things that we need to talk about. These are things that we need to know. These are conversations that we need to have on a regular basis. We're going to hashtag no dapple it, no DAPL, because I stand with Standing Rock. They are in North Dakota and will be there until January 1st, combating and fighting the state of North Dakota for a treaty that the United States government had in conjunction with the natives, and the state of North Dakota is just like, forget your greed.
This happened
But
shortly
with that
before
being
9:30.
said,
The
this is
2000 red Honda
Stuart
was stolen
James,
from a mobile gas
hashtag no
station on
dapple.
Washington Street in Eggleston Square. The thief taking off with the
We'll
car,
be right
apparently
back.
not
Let me go get our
realizing
guest
that the
situated.
owner, who was standing outside, had her 9-month-old baby boy in a car seat in the back. Immediately, Boston police cruisers rushed to the area, and within minutes, the Honda was spotted, parked outside number 72 Walnut Park, about a block and a half away. The officer approaching the car could hear the baby crying for his mother. The car abandoned, the infant was not harmed. Soon afterwards, the baby and his mother were reunited. Both were escorted from the scene by Boston police officers, the woman covering her head, asking not to be identified. Again, the little boy was not harmed. The description of the car thief is somewhat vague. A Hispanic male around 5'8", maybe 23 years old, with a ponytail, wearing a white T-shirt. Live in Roxbury, Jorge Quiroga, WCBB News Center 5.
That are being forced to assimilate or die out. We're worried about things like our language and our culture. And we want this on our own terms. We don't want it to, we don't want to be able to hang on to it because the federal government says we can keep this much and we can keep that much. It's part of us. We want all.
like whatever makes you comfortable.
Thank you.
Just use your. Do you have children?
Hey, baby.
Just use your dad voice.
Oh, I'm glad.
This time around, they won't take it no more. What if I die? We'll be standing with our fists tied. They try to kill us off, they don't never have it this time. What if I die? We'll be standing with our fists tied. They try to kill us off, they don't never have it this time. Let me paint a picture that you watch away the ignorance. Play it through the speakers just to make sure that they listen. And we treat it like prisoners in this country that we living in. Everything is fine to the toilet that we swimming in. Companies are acting like this good, but there's a million ignoring.
Huh?
I've been here a couple of years.
When's the last time you've been here?
Actually, got fired
Last year?
It's been so long.
Do you remember who show you on?
I wasn't here. I wasn't on somebody's show. I was here helping somebody in the store.
Well, Doug and Emily, they were all taken to the hospital. Their current conditions not known, but we did talk to the police chief just a short time ago, and he does say that they are expected to be okay. That's the good news here. I want to take you upstairs to Sky 5 and show you the scene from there. The chief, again, reiterating what you just said there. The first vehicle was struck, and that actually was stopped for the pedestrians in the crosswalk. The vehicle that was rear-ended was pushed into the crosswalk. So again, you have one vehicle that is stopped in the crosswalk, a second vehicle comes up behind it and rear ends it, pushing that first vehicle into the crosswalk, striking that pregnant mother and her 3 children. They were all rushed to the hospital, and one of the drivers also taken to the hospital. Witnesses here on scene describe a pretty horrific ordeal. They tell us the mother was pregnant, but is pregnant, but again, she did have the presence of mind to tend to her children and to try to call for help. Witnesses, though, they did that. They came running out of their houses and tended to her. The chief tells us that at this point, this is still an active investigation. As you can see behind me, no charges have been filed at this time, but the chief says they will be stepping up patrols in this area because there are a lot of pedestrians, and this is a street where people tend to speed. Reporting live in Hopkinton, Todd Kaskiewicz, WCVB News Center 5.
Okay.
Good rising, Kimi. How you doing all the way in Cali? Shout out to everybody that stands with Standing Rock. Shout out to all those that actually know what Standing Rock means and what's going on in North Dakota. If you don't know, please go do your due diligence. And we have probably one of the most due diligent men on earth in the building right now. If you don't know, let me go ahead and tell you his name is Chris. I butcher names, baby. Faraone, is that his name?
Yeah, that's the best way to say it.
Hey, Chris Faraone is an award-winning journalist, AAN or NENPA. What does that stand for, Chris?
That was New England Newspaper and Press Association.
Okay,
the other one is Association of Alternative News Media.
Alternative News Media.
Yeah, like the Dig, where I'm the editor here. We have papers like that across. There's about 100 papers like the Dig across the country. So every city, not every city, but a lot of big cities have, an alternative to the Globes and the Heralds of the world.
I got you. So you are a former Boston Phoenix staff writer and the news plus feature editor of DigBoston and a co-founder of the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism. And you're also an adjunct professor as well at Salem State.
Yes.
So what don't we know about you, Chris?
Actually, I guess it's relevant since there's a lot of music played up in here. Is that I am also kind of like not a ghostwriter, but a biographer for a lot of members of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You write the bios for the Wu-Tang.
Yeah, but you can look it up. I've written.
How dope is that?
So I've done liner notes for a lot of artists. Hip hop was not always considered the same, was not given the same weight by record labels. So back in the day, when a lot of hip hop albums came out, say in the 90s, unlike rock albums, which had these big fold outs with the lyrics and the stories about how the albums were made, hip hop would just come like in a sleeve. Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't pay not the same money was put into it. So all these years later, when all those generation of hip hop albums come up, for example, we did so early, Liquid Swords with Jizza, and put it out for the 20th anniversary. put it out as a chessboard actually.
Ah.
Yeah, with chess pieces and stuff. And
Can
then
you play chess?
Well, nah, I can't. I learned once and I forgot. I know, it's terrible. And then we go over track by track, like what were you doing, how that all come from.
Yeah.
I just did a whole one with Cypress Hill for a reissue of their first album.
Okay.
Cypress Hill came out as this giant skull, and it's cool. It's for super nerdy fans. If you really need to know the deepest level of everything. I've done 2 with Ghostface, and just kind of go over where all the tracks were. It's cool. For me.
No, it's cool
As a
for
hip hop
anybody listening.
fan,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's historic. Like, to be able to have that on your resume, that's dope.
Yeah, and I did one for Nas even, which was like the coolest
Okay,
one
that's
of all.
my husband. We're
Yeah,
married.
so Nas is like my favorite rapper, of course, from Queens, and that was a big one. I never, it wasn't like it wasn't the same level of kind of input that I have with a lot of other artists. It was more like me working with Nas through somebody else, but it doesn't matter. It was Nas.
It was still Nas.
He ultimately approved what I wrote about. It was for a box set that they put out for all of his for over a certain number of years.
Yeah,
It was cool. It was great for me.
He's one of my favorites as well. And you said you're from Queens. What are you doing in Boston?
It's
Boston.
like, well, New York. When you're from Queens, when you're from New York, it's kind of like you grow up, and I grew up in the '80s and the '90s, and New York's just not what it was. New York is totally unaffordable, and that's cool. New York really, and Boston obviously has its issues with gentrification now too. But as far as New York, I understand that the city reinvents itself every so many years, but it's certainly not the city I grew up in. My family's not there. Nobody's even in Queens anymore. It's furthermore, when you grow up in Queens, looking at Manhattan, you don't want to live in Queens. And Manhattan is this place now where like even doctors can't afford to live.
What?
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to be clearing millions to live on the actual island of Manhattan now. Unless you are in a different, certain situation. But as far as just go there, get an apartment, you're talking, God knows, even to rent something, tens of thousands of dollars. In advance, just to get,
Wow.
It's like moving to Back Bay, here in Boston. But for me, I don't care. I moved up here about 12 years ago. I love this city. I love everything about it. I've read every book. I've walked these streets as a reporter, and it's a great way to get to learn the city. Especially if you're covering protests. Sometimes you get like 7 miles at a time. I guess I was thinking 7 miles because Blue Hill Ave is 7 miles long. I've certainly walked the entire stretch. But yeah, so I really love the city. I'm not into sports, so that makes it easier, I guess. Everybody's like, how could you go to Boston? And and I'm a hip hop head, so when I came here, I guess another thing people don't really realize from outside the city. But if you're really into going to shows and underground shows, and there are promoters here who bring the best underground acts from all over the country, Boston's been a great place. It's been great to me. So, I guess that's it. It's my adopted hometown. I still go to New York for business all the time and stuff, but it's not the same New York.
Adopted hometown. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you said something. When you think about Boston and hip hop, has anybody really put Boston on the map as far as hip hop is concerned?
Well, a ton of people. What people have to realize is that, there's really 2 tracks. I think now a lot of artists are realizing that dream of like getting signed to a major label, it just hasn't existed for years. Even 10 years ago, there were like 10 big major label rappers. Those who have come to understand over the years that, it's not just, throwing it up and having a dream. If you want to really do it for a career, it's very possible. And as far as I love answering this question, but as far as like putting it on the map, there are a couple dozen artists from Boston who travel as much as they want and do shows all over the world, from Rex, Terminology, Slane, Acrobatic, Mr. Liff, Ed O.G. A lot of them actually tour together. On the new Rex album, there's a track called Plane Gang, it's like I think it's Ed O.G., Acrobatic, Terminology, and Rex, and they're talking about they travel a lot of these guys And even up and coming, like Dutch Rebel, like people are getting in that groove and getting a lot of exposure. I can't stress enough that like it may be a hard, long grind, but doing it that way is a lot more valuable than having like a big hit. That big hit goes quick, especially if you didn't have the rights to it and stuff. So, I think I look at a city like, I was funny, not funny, but, when there were riots and there was a lot of action in Milwaukee not long ago. I always think about when something happens, I always think about a city through its hip hop. That's how the window that I've had onto it. And of course, Cuckoo Cal Cuckoo Cal is a rapper. He had a song called My Projects out of Milwaukee many years ago. He's pretty much the biggest rapper to ever come out of Milwaukee.
In my projects, that one?
Projects, thick, in my projects. Yeah, it's a dope track too. And it's one of the biggest selling independent albums of all time when it came out. And it blew up, and he ended up getting a record label. My point is that, it didn't really do a lot for him. Maybe that's just one example, but, people have to realize that, it's not, if Boston were to have the biggest, silliest thing on the map tomorrow, wouldn't do a damn thing for everybody else. Maybe there'd be one crew that got put on, but things don't really work like that anymore. Certainly over the years there have been people who have, been along that mainstream track and have had that kind of exposure, who are still doing great music. I did a story on the Boston Six. You got Antonio, props to Antonio Ennis, twice out, who has been involved in a number of, movements that really resonated with a lot of people, and that's what it's really all about. I can't speak to the individual paper that different artists make, but as far as putting Boston on the map, I promise you, from California to Asia to Rex actually is touring Africa with this new album. There's people, trust me, who know about Boston through its hip hop, and a lot of the I'm a Southern rap hater. That's fine. People can call in and hate on me for that, but
617-282-0062.
not all of it, but but the truth is that a lot of interest in hip hop, and it's changing. There's definitely a lot more love for more newfangled forms of hip hop, trap and stuff overseas now than there was. But a lot of the hip hop enthusiasm in Europe in particular is really like a boom bap nostalgia. And hilariously, I think since they don't always speak English, they tend to like some of the more like intellectual, heady, lyrical hip hop, which I just find that to be interesting, because I think probably a lot of Europeans speak English better than a lot of us Americans.
I know that's right.
But anyway, so that's my very long nerdy answer. But really, I think that there are a lot of artists who continue to show, especially. I hope that I know a lot of them do talk to young people about this, but if young people want to be involved in hip hop, there's a few things they need to know. One is that there are a lot of other tracks than just doing the same thing that the dudes on television are doing, and also you don't have to be MCing. I'm a reporter. I certainly don't make a lot of money, but there's definitely people who book shows. People, there's you really want to be involved with hip hop. Everyone's always looking for a tour manager. Can you put it down for a couple months on the road? That's what hip hop is, and there's a lot of sides to the game that a lot of people don't see. But for anybody who wants to really be involved in the game, there's certainly opportunities there.
I was not expecting this interview to go this route. I was not expecting hip hop to be the basis of our conversation.
It's the basis of everything. Right? It's the basis of why I became a reporter in Boston. I was already a hip hop reporter. One of my first non-hip hop stories was we had caught, basically it's more than 10 years ago now, but artists like DL, Daniel Laurent.
Yeah.
DL.
DL's been on the show, sent us music.
And so DL, a couple others back in the day, got to the point where Boston police were telling club owners downtown that even if they played any hip hop, they wouldn't give police details.
Oh, is that why we still have a problem today?
Well, it's still a problem, but back then the cops were brazen enough to actually be putting even in writing and emails and stuff so we kind of blew the lid off of that and brought some hip hop back to the city, or at least they couldn't openly discriminate the way they were.
Can you post that? Can we read?
It's funny. It's funny that you said it. I actually just dug it up, so I have to transcribe it. It's a story that doesn't even exist online right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I will have it up and I'll email it to you.
Absolutely, we'd love to see that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, obviously a lot of those same problems persist. Yeah, that was it. So I really saw through hip hop, kind of led over to that social issue, and I've been plugging away ever since. And certainly, a ton of my sources for non-music stories have come from connections I've made in, while covering hip hop, through people I know, through the hip hop family, and so just like people like Antonio Ennis, who works with City Life Vida Urbana now as an activist. I mean, that was his natural. But if you were to see Antonio out at a protest with a megaphone, you would understand right away that was absolutely a natural segue between being an MC and commanding a crowd and having 200 people on the street, which is kind of like a call and response tradition in its own right.
Yeah,
course,
absolutely.
Right?
Why media?
For me, I I was not born to. I like just being a part of things, or like being up close. I guess it's part of being a New Yorker, of course, or growing up maybe in a city like Boston, where everything's just like right there. It's my character, it's my personality. So I like to tell, especially young people. We had a good time. I was teaching at the Burke. There's a new writing program there, and I was telling the people there that it's really a medium what I do. It's really being a writer, being in the media, being a reporter could be anything, right? It's not necessarily like I think a lot of people don't realize that there are people who just write about sneakers. There are people who just write about the Supreme Court. There are people who just write about one thing or another. We're all kind of doing the same thing, but not really, right? So it started with music. I wanted to be around a lot of the music that was being made, around a lot of the hip hop music being made in New York. That was like the lyricist lounge era in the 90s, and then bleeding over into the early 2000s. And it was like, it's happening, right? It's right there. Other people are getting paid to write about it. They're not necessarily even always good at it. Might as well be me, we're all going to end up having a job, right? We might as well have a job like that. If somebody's going to have that job,
it's going to be
me. And then the media is really malleable. So I guess I can't even. I'm so spoiled. Not like we don't make a lot, but I'm so spoiled in that I don't even know what it would be like to not be able to do whatever the hell I want. Whatever my interests are, that's what I'm doing that week. There are a lot of people, and some people are better with a regimented schedule who do the same kind of job every day. Even if I had the coolest job in the world, I don't think I could do that. I was at a brewery the other day, and I was thinking for a second, I don't know if you've ever been to a brewery during the day, when everybody's not there partying. They're working their asses off, right? They're really, they're in there and they're pouring the grains and everything like that. Props to Aeronaut Brewery, by the way.
Where's that?
It's up in Somerville, and I'll blow it up again because we have a holiday party coming up there.
I'd like to be invited to that.
Well, it's open. It's free.
It's open to everybody?
Yeah, of course. He's serious. But really, it's but then I was like, I couldn't really do the same thing. If I was working at a brewery, I'm sure there'd be one day where I woke up, I wanted to work in a grow house or a dispensary, and then I wanted to work somewhere else. So for me, the media is really, it's very, not for everybody, but the way that I've kind of conducted myself in the media, it's very, adapt. I can, use it for whatever I'm really interested in at the time, and use that as the medium to kind of spread those stories.
I feel you. I love it. I wouldn't know. I'm like you. I am spoiled in the sense of I do what I want because it's what I don't know. It's what I love.
Oh, I know, and I listen. Your show is you're really I guess a lot of the same what you do. You don't really tell them. Trying to communicate stories that are in the alt media we say there's really two things we do. We tell stories that other people aren't telling, and we tell stories that other people are telling, but we do it in a different way, in the way that we really think that it should be.
Unorthodox conversations.
Yeah, it's also
universal consciousness.
There you go. See, I don't have the fancy I don't know, but yes. Say that again.
So that's the basis and the premise of this show is unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness.
Beautiful. Yes, I mean that's really it, and I think that people definitely appreciate that. It's interesting that we see a lot of the word for it is news aggregation, but what we see is a lot of basically, if you look up like the hot story of the day, right, you'll see like hundreds of versions of that story from different sites, same quotes, same stuff like that. And I would say for me, that's called aggregation. And when you get young reporters, if you get a job like an online news site that's national, you have to do like, some people have to do like 20 of those a day. You're basically just taking other news, cutting and snipping, and for me, that's, if somebody wants to do that, well, peace to him or her, but for me, I like cooking. I'd rather work in a restaurant. If I'm not going to write the stuff that I want to write, then I'll just do something else. It's not...
Or like shine a different angle on it.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. But if I had to do that, for me, writing is not... I'm not in this for the mechanics of writing, you know what I mean? It's really... but yeah, so the same way that you certainly play music and tell stories that...
I don't play music. Don't say that. That's a lie.
Oh, well, I'm saying like the track...
I do play music.
I just meant the track that I heard, like, just anything that you expose is stuff that we're not going to see or hear anywhere else. That's what I'm in it for. That's really, it's about that like assisting with that discovery.
I understand now more when you're like, who was that you were playing earlier? I was like, okay, usually reporters don't really care.
Yeah, right? Well, that's what I was referring to. So yeah, I mean, basically, it's just the way that it's nice having there's no real guidelines. You kind of make them up as you go. And I think that's how human behavior, I think, really is. My students I teach at Salem State, they're always blown away when I tell them we have a whole class about fact I think it's coming up on payola, and I don't think a lot of people realize that they've almost, unless they listen to radio stations like Big City, they've probably never actually heard a song that a DJ wanted to play. And having been around all sorts of DJs, I happen to know that even someone like Funkmaster Flex in New York, even he doesn't get to pick what he plays, and that's really mind blowing to people. So for me, if I can have an outlet in media where I can pick what I think is better as opposed to what some corporation or some payola scandal waiting to happen tells me I should be playing or saying, all the better for it.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, as a reporter, you may not have written stories about it, but you're definitely in the know. What is your take on the political process or politics in the city of Boston from a reporter's standpoint?
Well, one thing, and one of the reasons that as a reporter, that I love Boston is that there's very few cities. In fact, I got to figure out what other ones there are, but there's very few cities where few states where the biggest city in the state is also the capital. For example, of course, New York, the capital is in Albany, several hours north of Manhattan. With Boston, the State House, Beacon Hill, is, you could throw a baseball and hit Boston City Hall. Now, this really impacts everything around here. I can't stress enough that people need to pay attention to what happens on Beacon Hill. It drives me crazy to see everybody just talking about the presidential election. That's important, of course, but what's really important is what happens at the state level. Everything you do, who you lay next, everything that affects your
You're
life.
right. Who you lay next to
Who you lay next to, the kind of taxes you pay, everything. Schools, because I know that schools are a big topic on this show. It goes on and on, all right? So, that's where the action is. So, being a reporter in Boston is more than just being like a city reporter. It's really an interesting hybrid. It kind of changes the whole dynamic, at least for someone like me who covers the whole spectrum. But it's an unbelievable place. There's tons of news here. All you have to do is look. It's a changing city, and not necessarily for the better. I don't like to see myself as someone who's, like, especially not being from here, like clamoring for the old school. But certainly, we're seeing people who have roots here and who have worked to sustain, particularly parts of the city that have been tough to sustain over the years, just like, you know, being up and out, being pushed out. And that's you know, that's my wheelhouse. That's the stuff I cover. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's an unbelievable place. And one really interesting thing about it is it's really always kind of like two sides. And the one side is kind of the city, whether it's Boston or Somerville, especially Boston and Somerville. Cambridge is a little different, but Boston and Somerville, people have to understand, have these unbelievable media operations. The cities themselves, and other cities too, but these are the ones that stick out of my head. You know, these cities spend, in the case of Boston, millions a year, sending, you know, basically trying to lead the media. We get press releases all day. It never ends, and that's fine. Well, not really. I don't really think it's fine. I personally don't believe that tax dollars should be paying for public relations. At the same time, you know, it makes the opportunity there for me as an alternative reporter to go in there and find out what the hell is really going on, to talk to the other people. Because there are other voices out there, but it's really mind-blowing how many reporters don't find them at all. You know, it's real easy to do some lazy reporting. You know, you get the press release from the city, you go and report it, but for me, that's, again, what's the point? I'd rather be making sandwiches. I really would. I love making sandwiches. So if I'm just gonna rewrite somebody else's press release, I'll make sandwiches instead. You know, it would just be that much.
He said I'll just make sandwiches instead.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. So for those who don't know, we're currently in the building with Chris Faraone, and Chris is, as you've heard, a reporter and a hip hop head. Are you a sneakerhead too?
In my older years, I'm 37 now. It's really gotten to the point where I've got about 25 pairs of New Balance 574s, and I got like wide, flat feet. And Frank, I gotta be honest with you, I'm sure I'm not the only person who's come on the show. I really abhor the sneaker trend the way it has been. You know, I remember sneakers. I remember we used to go to like Brooklyn to get like. It didn't matter how much it cost at all. If you found like some crazy like European brand that no one else had, you know, and you brought that back to Queens, like that was just hot, right? And now I feel like it's really a competition for the newest, most expensive, and I don't really respect that part of the game as much because, for one, there's no skill in acquiring anything because you can just get anything online, and everybody knows where to get everything.
So you miss. You know, match my fly, match my fresh.
Well,
that's what you miss.
Yeah, but I think that there should be kind of skill to anything. Like, I hate when rappers brag, I have the most weed. Anybody can, you just buy the weed. Anybody can buy the weed. I don't understand. Why are you bragging about that? So, you know, that's.
Who said I have the most weed?
Anybody, you know, so for the sneaker game, that's where I'm at with that. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, I like my New Balance for sure. And of course, you know, New Balance is a company that's good to the city of Boston.
Of course. You know, there's, I met an Airbnb that had a pair of European sneakers that were so dope. He was like, they're so cheap here. Like, it's nothing. But I've never even heard of the company.
Yeah, well, that's I mean, I was always, and trust me, a lot of those fell apart back in the day, but I was always about that, because first of all, there'd be some interesting, you know, that was what it was all about, bringing something that nobody had, and now, you know, a lot of it is like, what everybody has.
Yes,
you want to get that hot.
$1,200 pair of sneakers.
I've heard some. I hate to sound like an old fogey, but that is just insane. Like, I heard some of the prices, and I remember. I at least remember that when you know, my mom would go halves with Jordans on me, and you know, something like that. When I would be like 12 years old, but they've lasted for a long time. I mean, they were pretty durable. You know, the 2s and 3s. I remember they were good kicks, but. I don't know. It's something totally different now, and I can't even really speak on it properly because, frankly, I do understand as a collector of other things myself. That's not always just, you know, they're not necessarily collecting to rock them, and that's cool. And I know some of them have a good resale value, I guess, which is just so odd for something that you sweat in. But yeah, that's where I'm on sneakers.
Well, we currently have a call on the line, 617-282-0062. Verizon caller, you're live.
Good Verizon.
I wanted to say thank you to the young man for being a reporter and just getting news, and you too, sister, for going somewhere where someone else won't go and having the courage to do it. What I did want to say is you made a valid point about folks need to keep their eye on Beacon Hill. Our past governor left with the AAA bond rating and left some money in the think tank, so to speak. We're $200 billion in the hole right now in Massachusetts. We're talking about, and this governor is talking about furloughs, layoffs, and possible fires. What do you think about that?
Great question.
I think it's an utter shame. So I'll hit it at a couple levels. For one is when people are paying attention to Beacon Hill, I hope they can see through that smile on Governor Baker. We really need to. I've met him too, and he's certainly a nice guy, despite being a Republican and all. He's sort of affable, right? But a lot of the stuff he's doing, like some of the anticipated austerity cuts that our caller is speaking of, are absolutely horrifying. And let's talk about this in perspective. I know this is a show that respects context. Let's take a look. I don't know if people are familiar. This week, for example, something called Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit. So our city can be a playground for the up-and-coming wealthy from around the country, and
also our schools, because they're going to visit our schools.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They are. Oh,
Yeah.
I hope they go to some of the schools that I volunteer at that barely have computers for any of the students. But I really think that people have to take everything into consideration. Politicians hate this, but they don't want to talk about everything in the same picture. But if we're going to talk about cuts, then let's talk about GE, General Electric, for example, getting millions of dollars in state money. Governor Baker really, I think a lot of the moves he's making with privatization of the T and attempts at privatization in smaller pockets of government as well are frightening. Those are jobs that are supposed to be protected in a lot of cases, I think so long as people watch, I think people will be amazed that because so few people watch Beacon Hill, when something does come up, you can have an influence. You really can call your legislators, and let's get some friction up there. It's mostly Democrats in the legislature, and it's a Republican governor, and they certainly don't agree on everything. But in this day and age, what we call neoliberalism, when we talk about Democrats, which basically means that a lot of Democrats, in my interpretation, is that a lot of Democrats see the answer in the corporations that are killing us. That makes for a lot of agreement with Republicans. And when you have a moderate Republican, so-called moderate Republican like Charlie Baker on Beacon Hill, we're already seeing what that means. And it just means prosperity, more prosperity for those who are already doing very well. Certainly the tune of having to have big cuts coming up and all that stuff, that is not the tune that Charlie Baker or any other people on Beacon Hill sing when they're talking to the Chamber of Commerce and to wealthy people and to people who are doing great in this economy. It's only the song they sing when they come and start talking to people who are already getting it, not getting it in a good way, or who are already getting hurt. So, that's why people need to pay attention. It's like, same with, people may not have lobbyists, but you have your own, everyday people may not have too many lobbyists looking out for them, but you got yourself, that's.
We definitely lobby for ourselves here on the show. We know how important it is to pick up the phone and call the 311s of the city and the state. And when you want results, you have to go for them. You can't just rely on somebody else to speak on your behalf.
Absolutely.
So, are you a Democrat or Republican?
I'm unenrolled, which in Massachusetts, that's our fancy word for unregistered, of course. Local elections, I've of course voted for Democrats or Republicans, even though in Boston, for example, they don't run as an actual party in city elections. But I'm not. I really have, especially being a reporter in Massachusetts, it's hard to have any love for Democrats. So whereas I am, of course, liberal, progressive, and maybe under other circumstances would be a Democrat, in Massachusetts with an open system where I could vote for either party in any election, I just kind of, I prefer to stay unenrolled.
Okay, I understand that as an independent.
Right.
let's stay on politics for a second. Where can we find the best news that speaks to us that isn't copy-pasting what the sick systems want us to believe?
You're talking about national or everything? Or?
Just anything and everything. So I personally use Daily Mail from the UK. I find that we get stories sometimes up to a week sooner than are told here in the United States. And I feel as if some of the stories, most of the stories, are unbiased in the sense of choosing a side. Where here in the United States, I feel like the side is the one that we want you to believe in.
Yeah. I mean, certainly UK has some good resources. Guardian is fantastic as well. I always tell people for your nightly dose of news, international, national. I love Democracy Now! It's free. You can listen to it. You can watch it. For me as a reporter, though, I do read a lot of sources, things like the Boston Globe that I scream. It's not like everything I read I necessarily am believing everything I read. But I feel like it's important to get it from a range. And if you're in Boston, especially we're here in Dorchester, I think it's important to acknowledge that, you still have some of the best community newspapers in the country. The Dorchester Reporter is one of the best local newspapers, not just here, but anywhere. Spare Change does some great stuff. I'm the editor of the Dig. Shout out to the Bay State Banner. Yahoo Miller is just doing unbelievable work. I pick up the Bay State Banner every week, and it's just like, you just get a whole handful of stories that aren't elsewhere. And I'm not just knocking other outlets for not covering those stories. I understand you can't cover everything, but really, any of it?
None of it.
So I definitely think that people need to realize you have some really great local publications here as well.
Absolutely. As far as sticking on local news, why do you feel as if Dorchester, Roxbury matter? If somebody gets shot in South End, breaking news. Somebody gets shot in Roxbury, 100 feet from Mass Ave, and it is not covered. There's no stories. There's no, you might see a van outside of the crime scene, but it's not reported. And on top of it's not even during the tweets of the Boston police. You might find it from Statco. Statco might report on it, and that's it.
Yeah. So a few things there. Absolutely, for one, it's a very real observation, and I can't. One thing to point to. It's so hard. Remember when there was a shooting on the Center Street side of Jamaica Plain like a year and a half ago? I've never seen anything like it. There were politicians there sweeping up the glass. I mean, it was unbelievable. Yeah. And maybe that's how it should be every time, right? Now, one thing, this is going to be kind of a crazy answer, but I think maybe people should almost be relieved that not every shooting is covered. When newsrooms were staffed to the point that every shooting could be covered, we saw a lot of horrific coverage. We saw young people who were not affiliated with gangs. Not like if they were, they should be smeared, but who are not affiliated with gangs being called gang members and violent criminals on the cover of certain tabloid newspapers. So I will say that while you're totally right, a lot of things that should be covered aren't, especially if people were going to cover them in a responsible way. But I do think that since we've had, newsrooms are so understaffed, sometimes when they are looked at, they're looked at a little better. Maybe more analytically in the aggregate. And what we don't have is good reporting on police brutality, and other than say what the ACLU has done. But we're certainly not getting it from our regular mainstream outlets around here. In fact, I will call the Boston Globe out specifically for having several articles, particularly when Black Lives Matter nationally was having a lot of big protests, things were unfolding in Baltimore and such. The Boston Globe managed to write a series of articles about police brutality nationwide without mentioning a single case in Boston, not one. And that's what's missing. I guess it would be great if there were responsible reporters covering crime scenes and stuff like that. What I think is more important are covering the actual relations. So that the Boston Police Department doesn't just get to say whatever the hell it wants, and have that be the story.
I wish I could rewind that and play it back right now.
Yeah.
Say it again.
I mean,
No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I want to thank the callers that are currently on hold. My last question before we take some more phone calls. One of the things that we talk here on the show is back in '83 when I was born, we had over 50 networks that covered the news. We had over 50 controlling individual networks that dictated their own story. Currently we have 6. So we went from 50 to 6. Now everything from our media to our news to our newspaper to our social media to these things that we find as news, as stories, 6 people control them versus 50 people controlling them. And these 6 people have relationships with each other. How can we, the viewers, the listeners, the consumers, filter out the truth versus what we're being guided to believe?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I get asked that a lot, and I think, first of all, a lot of it's about being on your own game and knowing, you got to, it's that media literacy and knowing what you're reading. People increasingly say in surveys and such that they almost don't even care where their news is coming from. Because we see something on Facebook, particularly, people are always saying this, where do you get your news from? I get my news from Twitter. I get my news from Facebook. Well, those aren't places, they don't make news, those 2 places. And I understand, I don't mean to say this in a snobby way, because I'm a media, you're a media person, we live in this. And I get it, not everyone does, so I try to, but really, what are you clicking through to? What are you clicking through to? And you don't have to be rude when people share something that's a false story or from a crazy site, but you don't have to share it yourself. Now, on the flip side of that, and this is the real answer to the question, is that let's help everybody else. So when we talk about outlets like the Bay State Banner or the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, which I run, or the Dorchester Reporter, now, maybe not mine because that's new around here, but people who, you're from here, that the Dot Reporter or the Banner or the Globe, if it's a story that you do like, that you do agree with or something, that's a reliable source. Well, instead of sharing something, another screw Trump meme, share an article from the Reporter. Share an op-ed in the Banner that somebody, a community activist wrote. Share something of Jamal Crawford's from the Blackstonian, and that's really what it is. So it works on both sides, but I can't stress that enough. I can't, I get my own reporters drive me up a wall. We'll have a new big story out, and we have a big crew of freelance reporters, and I'm not gonna holler at everybody to proactively share our stuff, but people need to realize that that's a big thing. When I teach a class of high school students, for example, I explain to them, there's 30 of you in here. You realize that if the 30 of you shared, one thing that you wanted everyone to know on all your platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever, suddenly that's 120 connections, right? Out of nowhere, they're like, whoa, and I draw it out on the board, how all these nodes can connect. Well, that's what it's about. When we have reliable sources, when we have stories that are important, certainly, one thing that's important, there are definitely progressive outlets like Alternet that Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism works with that are national outlets. And a lot of the times,
and it's Alternet?
Oh yeah, ALTERNET, Alternet, and they're a big national outlet. And a lot of the times, to have impact in Boston, we actually do have to go to these outside sources, and those are good stories sometimes about Boston that come from the outside. But really, on smaller issues, it's about being on your game. If you work in insurance, do you read all the different insurance pages? Well, when there's something about Boston, maybe that's what you need to go share with your network. You're a hip hop head, right? Oh, did somebody write something in XXL that's about a Boston artist? Wow, that's huge. Maybe you should share that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I want to give a huge shout out to those that are currently on hold for their patience. Good rising, Holly, alive.
Good rising.
Good rising, my love. Talk to me.
Yeah, you know what? I love what you guys are talking about, man, because you guys are actually talking about things that matter. And one of the things is I was just thinking about something that you said, and then I thought about something else you said, and I thought about a whole lot of things you guys were talking about. And I think that you guys are hitting things spot on. But I do have to say that the Bay State Banner is hands down one of the most up-to-date news things that are happening not just in Roxbury, but Mattapan, Dorchester, and Roxbury, in the South End. Brother Yahweh has been getting around, but I just wish there was more Brother Yahwehs in the media. Unfortunately, the bigger media people are not going to connect with the little media people because the little media people are telling the truth. But the other people are telling lies to your vision, like television. Well, by the same token, what you guys are doing right now by keeping the dialogue open and keeping people talking about the possibilities of things that need to change, so hopefully someone picks up on it and decides that today is their day, that they want to make a decision. But I did want to go back to the nobody's talking about Beacon Hill. But I don't want to stay on that too long because you guys got other things to do in the show. But that is real important because for the whole 8 years that Governor Patrick was governor, they bashed him every day in the newspaper. But this guy Baker, he's able to just slither right through. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I agree that Governor Baker he's got this smile and he's gotten a free pass on a lot of things, and and I think it's important to look at him with a critical eye. As for Deval Patrick, I think that he definitely got it a lot, and there's certainly, particularly at the beginning of his first term, some unbelievably racist coverage, particularly in the Herald. I was actually pulling up some of those old headlines recently. Cadillac Deval, they had one with him with on these rims and stuff because he had bought
I remember
car,
that.
some
Yeah, I
horrific
do.
stuff. Other than that, I think that Deval Patrick also got a pass on a lot of his corporate-minded decisions. Let's not forget that the former governor now works for Bain Capital, the same place where Mitt Romney was. As for the Bay State Banner and Yahoo, they do an unbelievable work. We do hope to see more of it. I want to give a shout out also to Karen Morales, an East Boston native, who is doing some great business reporting for them. Binge, which is short for Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, which is my nonprofit.
Oh, that's what's on your hand.
Yeah, that's what's on my knuckles. So we are working with as many outlets like that on the kind of stories that they can't do. And we have been talking with Yahoo, and hopefully be working with the Banner sooner than later. But yeah, that's what it's all about. And I want to add another dimension to that is the reason that we're in the high schools and that we work with Press Pass TV, a nonprofit that does youth media, is because there's nothing more important than the conversation about diversity in media. But what's more important than the conversation is doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we just going in and we work with young people, and some of the reporting that we have done in DigBoston is actually just having young people particularly talk about schools. It's unbelievable when we talk about the mainstream media how you could ever write an article about like a school like Madison Park without quoting a single student is mind-blowing. So we come at it from the other perspective. And in fact, last year we gave a bunch of students at Madison Park tape recorders to go and do the reporting.
How did that work out?
Oh, it was amazing. And I tell you, if the measure of a good story is if the city does not like it. we had done that actually after, I don't know if you recall, Madison Park, the students there were 2 weeks without schedules, and by the way, ran it themselves. Right? There were no fights. There was no violence. You got to be proud of those young people. And but what happened was the media showed up after 2 weeks, and the administrators gave the media. They said, "Oh, here they have schedules now, right?" Okay. Well, I was with some of those young people,
and they still didn't have schedules.
Well, you know what they said to me?
What?
Were you one of them? Were you one of those dumb media people who took the schedule? Those were fake schedules. They go, what do you mean they go, we went to the week, that wasn't real. That was all just thrown together. So I said, you know what?
So that story was never told.
Well, yeah, we did this. This is the one we did. And actually, we did with Press Pass TV students. It came great. They interviewed, more than it does in students. And
can we get that on the stream
that you
too?
could find if you look up Madison Park High School, DigBoston. You'll find that.
I'm trying to look for it now. We do have another call on the line. We are in the building with Chris Faraone, and I'm loving this conversation. Chris, I appreciate the work that you do.
No, I appreciate the work that you do. This is fun too.
I wish I was a strong writer at my writing skills.
Well, I do have advice along those lines, and this is one thing that we do with young people. You know, the voice transcription is so good now, like on Google Voice and stuff, and especially someone like you who speaks so compellingly and does a show like this. I guarantee that if you had something on your mind, right, and you even wrote out a couple of notes, and you did it into the Google Voice where it transcribes it, you'll have to go in there and do some editing. But that whole bulk of the work of getting your thoughts out there, you'll have it, and then you kind of go in there like a sculptor and just carve around the sides. But
see, the way that, because I'm lazy, so I do the whole talk to text.
How can somebody who gets up and does a show from 5 to 7 every morning say that they're lazy? They can't do that.
Okay, I do a lot of talk to text, and people like, Tayla, you didn't type that. Like, I could tell you clearly didn't type that.
But it's getting better, and you do have to go in and edit. But I feel that a lot of people, I tell you, with the young people in particular, sometimes we will show them what they wrote, and they'll be, man, I didn't write that, and then we'll play it for them, and then they'll take it right away, rip it out of your hand, and go show their friends, like, yo, I wrote that. but it's almost hard to believe, because when you put the pen to the page, a lot of times people are trying to use big words they wouldn't normally use and such, and real, good writing that people pick up on, that relate to, is conversation, and that's and I think with the voice to text, I think we talk a lot about how technology is ruining communication. I don't necessarily always see it like that. I even think that Twitter teaches people, given you don't want to always, hand in an assignment in high school with an emoticon on it. At the same time, I think that Twitter, it teaches, it's a skill to be able to put an entire thought in 140 characters. So certainly one that a long-winded fellow like me doesn't always have.
I completely understand. That's why sometimes you just have to write it in your notes, screenshot it, and then post that.
Yeah, that works.
We have another call on the line at 617-282-0062. Go ahead and call you live.
Good rising, Tayla.
Good rising, my love. Is this DL?
Yeah, man.
I knew that voice. How are you?
So listen, I've been on hold for 24 minutes.
And thank you for your patience, DL. Thank you for your patience.
I had to. Chris Faraone, man, we go back, and he's one of the brilliant minds here, and he's very, very important, and I'm loving the conversation. Don't really have any points to interject because I'm loving the things you guys are covering, but I just wanted to salute him, salute everything that he's done, everything that he will do. And he goes back to what I consider, the golden times when we had different, media outlets and journalists covering hip-hop music. We had different radio stations, had different websites, different platforms to perform. So, I just wanted to say that, Tayla, you're far from lazy. You got a million jobs, whether you're doing virtual, whether you're stage natural, whether you're promoting Zals, and, you're all over the place, so knock it off. But salute to my guys, salute to you, Tayla. Listening to the conversation, I'm loving it. And, I know it's the top of the hour, so I'm going to get off now. But salute to y'all.
Thank you for your patience. 24 minutes is a long time, DL. That's
Props to
dedication.
DL. Thanks for calling in, man. And I just want to remind listeners that the DL and those guys fought for a lot of that. Fought for a lot of those venues. Fought for that distribution. Fought to get their voices heard, Fought to get on radio. So, it's not, a lot of that wasn't handed to them. The golden age wasn't handed to all of us. We certainly worked for a lot of it,
I understand that. So, Chris, what is it that we're missing that you want to lead us out with?
I want to come back. This is too much fun, but I just really hope that I think we hit it. I think that people show. It would be great if there was a media appreciation day, but every day should be right. So I always like to atone. So I get mad at people when all we talk about is Trump and Clinton. So I atone for it. For every time I tweet something about that stupid race, I make sure that tweet a Bay State Banner article, tweet something local. It's really we really need to support, and even if that just means a tweet, you know, I'm not asking for donations here. We'll get that from you at our party, by the way. So we do a lot of events, but I'll make sure that I come in and talk to you about any events we have coming up. Especially we do a lot, you know, right near here.
I would love for us to do like a check-in.
We could
like,
even we could do something together too. You know, I'm down for that.
I'm down
you know,
for it.
We do pop-up newsrooms sometimes. We just show up somewhere.
I'm famous for that.
Yeah, so that's you know, and you know, that's one big thing about Binge, about the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism.
Go on and give them the fish.
That's
Show them
it.
the fish.
That's the fish right there.
Right here too.
You know, so for Binge, it's really, we decidedly did not just come and start a fresh news site out of nowhere. Like, hey everybody, there's a million already people doing this, but we're gonna do it better. No, we're here to like work and help other outlets, you know, to kind of do the kind of stories and stuff that they're not doing. So, and by the way, that's not limited to just print. So we really do hope to be doing more radio. We're doing television. We have a show called Beyond Boston that is on like 12 of the community access stations.
Okay.
And the point of that is to show, like, you know, especially as lower income people get moved out of Boston proper, a lot of issues, housing issues, you name it, are impact everywhere. Malden, Cambridge, Newton, places that we don't even typically think. Newton has had affordable housing and low income housing for years, and especially because of, you know, I had that reaction too, you know, and because of that, people in places like that actually often have trouble getting help when they need it, you know. So the point of this show, Beyond Boston, is that we take a lot of these communities, their cable access stations like BNN in Boston have news shows already, right? We take the best and some, you know, topic and issue based journalism from those shows, and we it's like a digest. We show from different cities, and in doing that, we show how some issues, you know, really, even though we can often think about them behind community lines, they actually cross community lines, and that's certainly also the case from neighborhood to neighborhood in Boston, without a doubt. So, you know, by writing, by being kind of like multifaceted, and the whole point with Binge is that if we get these stories that your readers certainly, or your listeners are certainly responding to, that my readers respond to, we get these community stories, these important stories, these stories that aren't being covered, and we spread them out to enough small outlets that is going to have the same muscle as the bigs, as the Globes of the world. And
sometimes it takes for a smaller outlet to post something for the Globe and these bigger outlets to say, you know, maybe we should repost, maybe we should cover that. Do you think we can get some follow-up?
It does, and that's what, and it takes all outlets like us, you, to be on that level, to be, you know, to have that groundswell. And I can't, that's the history of the media. You know, that's one easy example. I know we're on our way out here is, you know, in New York City, I hate the term, but so-called ethnic papers, Spanish-speaking papers in particular, for years have been writing about the pretty much slave trade at with nail salons, and Asian papers as well have been writing about it. And the New York Times finally did a huge series last year that I think is going either did win several prizes or is about to, and they did not give the proper attribution. That's not what I'm talking about here. My point is that, yeah, of course, it's all that groundswell. You got to get it going in the grassroots media, and in order for that to happen, we need, you know, readers, listeners to support that, to spread the word, or else we're just talking to ourselves here.
Absolutely. So I do have one last question, because this is a question that comes up all the time. We see these billboards for 5 and 7 and 25 and 22 and 38, and all these billboards don't look like Boston. Like, I have not seen a person of anything that is not a white female or white male on any of these billboards when it comes to any of these news.
And I mean, I guess at least they're not pretending, right? Because, well, frankly, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way. I mean, it would, of course, we need people of color, but we don't need people of color who are just going to. We don't need people of color or white people who are just going to be reporting the same old stuff downtown, right? Mm-hmm. So, but those are related, aren't they? Because if you have a person of color, even if they're not necessarily, maybe they came in here from Iowa, right? But they certainly, you know, first of all, people in the Black community, Latino community are more comfortable talking to those reporters, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they'll call them ahead of time. I remember when Wes Lowry was here, he's with the Washington Post now, but he was writing for the Globe. You know, he was in town like but a couple of months, and he's an unbelievable reporter too. But you know, I'm certainly like losing my sources when I call him. I'm like, but you know what? That's great.
Yeah.
Because the fact that people who would call the alternative press feel they have an ear in the Globe newsroom for a change. And it's not like people in the big newsrooms don't listen to the people. They listen, but they're not always responding now, right? So, you know, as far as the billboards, I mean, listen, I don't know what is up. You know, with media consolidation, a lot of the reporting that the local newsrooms, well, it's limited, right? So a lot of the broadcasts you're getting are the nationally syndicated stuff getting piped in. So what's needed is across the board. It's a combination of, yes, at that top level, they need to just figure out how to get some more people of color into these newsrooms. And that's on the writing side too, by the way, and the editing side and production side, right? Because it's not unlike with more grassroots media and in alternative and independent media. At television stations stuff, it's not like they're really dispatching themselves. They're being told what to cover and where to go. And reporters really have to, they should, but they really have to, you know, fight for the stories that they want. So you can really, when I do say this to people, too, listen, when they do have a reporter, especially at that high level that they want, that they like, that they see there's a little hope that they might start reporting on communities of color or just issues that aren't being talked about enough. Don't hassle that person. Don't troll them on Twitter. And if you're at a nonprofit or if you need coverage, don't always be hassling them or asking them for it. But start a dialogue with them. Make sure they know you're there. You maybe retweet something. Maybe compliment them every now and hey, this was a great article by so and so. You know, trust me. I guess a lot of reporters stuff. Sure, we have egos. We get to see our name in print or on our faces on television in some cases every day. At the same time, there's not a lot of positive feedback. There's a lot of negative feedback. I mean, certainly, over the years of reporting on police, I've gotten a lot of death threats. That's the extreme version. But on your daily, it's just like, go to hell, go screw, and so any kind of like nice feedback. Trust me, it's remembered.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's legitimate. If this really is a person, you're like, hey, even if it's a restaurant critic, hey, I think it's great that you covered the places, the 3 new restaurants in Roxbury. I'm from Roxbury. We've never had a lot of. This is not me talking.
I got you.
It's great that we kind of have that activity now. Hopefully, you continue coming back when other things. That is so rare. I mean, you have no idea. It's so rare. Any kind of positive feedback. I'm not saying you have to blow smoke up their asses, but reporters are sensitive creatures after all. So let them know you're there, and that goes doubly for the locals. Bay State Banner, Dorchester Reporter. Let them know.
Big City 101.3.
Big City.
Because I'm an avid listener of our show, and I love the fact of our station, and I love the fact on the weekends you'll get Jamaica news, you'll get St. Lucia news, you'll get news from all over the world, the UK, Australia, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's big. Exactly. Big City 101.3 FM. Chris Faraone, go on. I would tell you to take us up, but we do have to big up Faith Naturals in a Pum Pum wash. So today I used the turmeric soap for the first time, and the turmeric soap, turmeric, as you guys know, a lot of people, you cook with it, but it's also really great for your skin. I put no lotion on today, and I feel like the turmeric soap is doing its job as far as moisturizing is concerned, and it also helps with scarring. I got stretch marks, so I'm going to go ahead and see if it lighten up them stretch marks. Don't forget, on Friday, I will be at ZC Boston. Come tip your bartender, 801 Mass Ave. They do have free parking, free delivery until 1 a.m., and they deliver all the way up Blue Hill Ave until it meets Columbia Road. Also, don't forget Couples Therapy, some amazing pieces, great prices. That's 722 Dudley Street. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, open until 10 p.m. And I want to give a huge shout out to one of our newest sponsors, And that is Miss Stacy Jackson, Independent Cleaning Crew. Let us take care of your dirty work. That is independentcleaningcrew.com. They take your major credit cards as well as PayPal and checks or e-checks, but they do commercials, event cleanups, residentials, and if you go ahead and tell them that Tayla Andre sent you, you'll get $5 off your next cleaning. And they also have eco-friendly products that she homemade. You guys know I love our Boston businesses, so please give a shout out and go check out independentcleaningcrew.com. Non-toxic, biodegradable, all natural ingredients, cleaning your home. And that just falls in line with everything that we believe in, everything that we stand for, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for what? Anything. I thank you, I love you, I appreciate you, and let me go ahead and fill your airwaves with this hashtag no dapple once again, because I need you to understand that what's going on in Standing Rock is something that we do need to stand for. There's no reason why a state needs to violate federal treaties with indigenous people, and I think it's disrespectful. And if you don't understand that, baby, you just don't understand life. I thank you. I love you. Chris, how can we find you?
I'm at Fara1, Fara, and the number 1 on Twitter, and bingeonline.org or at Jreports on Twitter.
And how do you spell it? Because you know we're a little slow.
Oh, sorry. BINJ. So bingeonline.org for the web, or at Jreports. BINJREPORTS on Twitter.
And we'll make sure we get all of those reports that we discussed on the Wake Up with Tayla Andre page, as well as the 10 years ago. I remember that you said that you were going to go ahead and transcribe it.
You know, at the very least, I'll just scan it in because I just found it. It's funny, I have it right on my desk today.
And we'll go ahead and get that posted.
Yeah, props to DL for calling it. But and then he has a big picture of him holding up a sign.
It really?
Yeah.
Dope. 101.3 FM, Waking Up with Tayla Andre. I thank you, I love you, and I appreciate you.
With the water situation, because anything could happen, and it's like, what if they come in and try to take us off?
Let's can we schedule you for? Yeah, so we are Facebook Live.
United States government. We've got a bigger point than that. We're saying.
So you think that whole thing is on?
Yeah, so this is on YouTube as well as Facebook Live. I abandoned audio recording. I need to go back to audio recording.
Whatever it is, I'll share it. I shared it like here, but for those who are not, definitely. Alright, so what do you want to do? Post election wrap up.
We can do that. What I'm gonna do right now is read some of these comments that we had from Facebook, and you guys aren't gonna be able to see us because we're connected to the computer right now. I really have Costa Rica on my bucket list. Oh, I should have mentioned, we're going, for those that are currently tuned in, we are going to Costa Rica for the 3rd year Tayla Andre anniversary. So this year, we're not just having a dinner at ZC. Save your money. We're going to Costa Rica in March. Good rising, good rising. About to take my break and listen to your show. I haven't heard anyone mention my projects in decades. Wow, that was a Throwback Tuesday moment. As long as Atlanta, Alabama, and Mississippi are not included in that Southern hip-hop hate, how can you hate Southern rap? B from Tennessee. We have, he's from Tennessee, and he listens every rising. No Clear Channel rules here, but anything gets played on Big City, but don't try to play that music on Facebook. Grand Rising, BK, Atonics, Lottos, BK,
British Knights, Etonics, and Lottos. All rare sneakers from back in the day.
Levon knows that business. He knows about that.
And Saucony's,
He said, Elise and Bailey's.
Yeah.
See, I'm 33, y'all. I don't know about that. I don't know about that life. Never heard the term ATL media. That alternative media. That's cool. Alternative right can go to hell. Levon just wearing BKs back in the 80s. There's certainly areas in Cali that would get you shot. They were called blood killers, worn by Crips. It was very much gang related. I was never a part of that environment, but I had a pair. Air American Radio is good too, at least in 2005 through 2010. I stopped listening after Al Franken and Rachel Maddow left. Rachel Maddow is currently on.
MSNBC. And Al Franken is a U.S. Senator.
He is for what?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. I love Rachel Maddows. British Knights. Great idea, Chris. Masterpiece on deck for you, Tayla. Voice to text. This is a great show today. Grand Rising. Tayla, great discussion this rising. I'm listening as I do my report before class. Love you. We live in a culture of cloned mass media. Everyone is telling the same story. Years ago, when media was more diverse and independent, it created more competition to be authentic. Now everything is taking breaking news and trending. Turmeric has lots of uses. Reggie B, what's up, brother? And it's FARA1 on Twitter, correct? That's it. I thank you. I love you.
Serious listeners.
I love them.
Awesome.
They are amazing.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And I think you could appreciate this drop going out.
Shout out to everybody in Standing Rock. Shout out to all the tribes that came from across the nation. Shout out to Chairman Archambault. Shout out to all my Standing Rock family. Shout out to all the natives across the nation. Shout out to Shailene Woodley for standing in solidarity with our native people. Shout out to all the celebrities who are supporting the movement. Shout out to everybody across the world who is
And you
supporting
can,
the movement.
Stuart James 365, I think is his name on Twitter. The guy who sings this.
Want to do
Yep, Tribe, baby, you know what it is. It's DJ Sus One, the feature presentation. Listen, make sure you wake up with Tayla, Andre, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 a.m. on Big City 101.3 FM. Wake up with the Radio Rebel. Politics, news, conspiracies. Wake up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. This is the type of stuff I'm into, alright? Make sure you tune in.
Let's go.
You're listening to Big City 101.3.
Do you want 15?
We can do the 15th. Is there anything you want to say? Because we're still live. We go overtime.
Yeah, sure.
Anything that you couldn't say on air.
Oh, I thought I could say whatever I wanted.
You can say whatever you want. We just can't cuss. That's
because of station rules, right?
Yeah. Just because we like what we do. So no cussing. But you cuss all the fuck you want on here though.
Well, all I was gonna say, I don't need to curse, but I'll say as and I would have said this on the air is if you go to DigBoston.com, where I am the editor, we have that's another place where I think you get a lot of news that you won't get any elsewhere. But also, going up later today, we have taken a look back at the last 4 years of prohibition, of cannabis prohibition, in the lead up to question 4 vote. So, rather than just kind of taking it in the context of what you're hearing in the news now, look at the fight that and all the patients we've spoken to over the years, and really what that movement's all about. It's an amazing piece. We've been working on it all week. And it's
Do you want to come report it?
What?
Can you come, like some of the pieces that you write, can you come on air and report them?
Yeah, of course. That's what it's all about. I could have that. A lot of those weren't actually me. They were my reporters, so we get some other people in
But
there
it's
as well.
you're still the editor though, right?
Yeah.
And what was the other thing that I wanted to ask you? What about other questions?
I don't know, what do you got?
Because I wanted to ask you about charter, but I didn't feel like getting into that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah, into opening the phone lines
Frankly,
and that.
yeah, and frankly, it's at this point, I think it's gonna fail.
I think it is too, because there's a lot of money that
There's money on both sides. For me, it's almost as far as complex of a situation it is for the tens of thousands of words that I've spilled about charter schools. It's pretty simple. Is that I care about all the schools, and when you look at the budget, not to be a total nerd about it, when you look at the line items of the schools like the Timothy, for example, in Roxbury, where I have family who works there and I volunteered over the years, they've just choked those schools dry over the years. They get less and less and less money. And what happens is, because they have less money, they don't do as well. And then the state comes in and the state says, oh, you're not doing well. We're gonna change the level of your school. And then here's what I want to say about charters. That's not even the issue. A lot of these charter school businesses, they're nonprofits mostly, but what they do is they're actually taking over schools without taking them over. So what you have right now are a lot of charter operations running schools, like English High School, for example. Mm-hmm. That it's not a charter school, but they're in there. So they don't need this legislation to get up in there, and that's what it is. So I'm not even here to demonize charters. Of course, that individual parents want what's best for their individual children. Who would ever deny that? That'd be insane to deny. But as a reporter, not as a parent, which I also am, it is, I believe, my responsibility to look at the overall situation. The overall situation is that in Boston in 2016, we still have schools where they're taking the PARCC test by hand because they don't even have computers. Even as we have Hub Week and all these, technologists and General Electric and all that. So, I am down to debate charter schools anytime, but I am absolutely tired of how narrow that topic is, and I think a lot of people are realizing that. Frankly, you have people like Mayor Marty Walsh, who is a pro-charter, big-time pro-charter, who is even himself opposed to this measure, and that's for a number of reasons, including union pressure, no doubt. But I think people really have to sit. And frankly, I heard somebody say it great yesterday. It was Maura Healey, the Attorney General, who I also don't see eye to eye on.
Because she wants to take away your guns and assault rifles.
She's got her issues too, but I'm just saying, as far as this, I'm surprised she even answered, because it's not really. I don't think she needs to politically, but as far as what she said, she just goes, listen, there are problems with schools, and I don't think this is the answer. And I think people look at it that simply. Not that I always recommend looking at the simplest answer to his question, but if we look at it that simple, is that going to fix the schools in Massachusetts? Is that going to bring us closer, or is that going to put us toward having more of a tiered system like the UK does? So I think the latter, and I think that anybody who looks at it honestly is going to think it. I even think that charter school advocates would reluctantly admit it, because they know that these schools that they are developing are really are something different. I challenge all of the philanthropists out there, and there are some who do it, but why not support traditional public schools? If they care, if these millionaires, and in some cases billionaires, who are helping out this charter school movement so much, if they care so much, then why aren't they? And I know what they would say. They would say because they don't want to give to schools where the union is powerful, and they don't want to just toss the money away. But anybody who thinks that Boston schools, public schools, are as funded as they should be or could be, should go to a Boston public school, particularly at the beginning of the school year, or beginning of a semester, and see the teachers scrambling for everything. It's not, the Bay State Banner did an incredible story on this. It's not a myth that teachers, and I've heard charter school people say that it's a myth. It's an insult to say that it's a myth that Boston public school teachers have to run around in the first couple of days of school looking for supplies and stuff. They do. I've been there.
We got letters home like, can you bring paper? Can you bring tissue? We need a few pens. I'm like, don't y'all have this?
So as far as, I hate to just be the media guy who slams the media, but this is what happens. So then if you see, and I've seen this, charter school people will deny that, or just even sometimes BPS administrators will deny that. And then the media, since they don't have another perspective, so their kids don't go to BPS, they ain't never been in BPS, right? What do they say back to that person? They don't say, you're full of it, as they should. They don't say, no, actually, I was at, so-and-so school, and that's not the case. So actually, I was at Community Academy, and they don't have any of the textbooks they need, right? No, because they don't have the perspective to say that. And if they did, they would be offended by this, kind of, judgment. But that's just not what happens. So, as for charters, yes, of course, I'm speaking personally against question 2. As much as I am for question 4, it would be nice.
What does question 4 have anything to do with question 2?
Well, not. I mean, I'm just saying these are those are the 2 questions that I definitely have a strong opinion on. Not a big casino gambling fan, and I think that what's the other one?
Animal cruelty.
Animal cruelty is not a good thing. But there's.
I think it's worded wrong. So if you vote yes on it, you're voting for animal cruelty. Like, it's not properly worded.
I feel unprepared. I'll have to. But yeah, I actually. By the way, is today? What's today's date?
Tuesday the 18th.
Today might be the last day people can register to vote. So you might want to tell people that.
Absolutely.
I gotta run now. I gotta go.
Thank you. One more time. How can we find you?
Bingeonline.org. So BINJ online.org, and then I'm personally at FARA1 Fara1 on Twitter.
And do you have a Facebook?
Yeah, I mean, just look me up, Chris Faraone on Facebook. It's an open Facebook. Anybody can check me there. Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism is on Facebook. DigBoston is on Facebook. Also on Twitter at DigBoston. But yeah, definitely. If we have some boxes around here, down in Dudley for sure. But that's another thing actually. We're working on distribution, so hopefully we'll have some more. I think we're Mattapan Square now, Dudley, but we definitely need to get out more. Also, hopefully we'll have boxes in Quincy and stuff soon too.
Well, let us know how we can help, because we are definitely here
I'll come back.
to educate the people.
Make it a thing.
Yes. Last day to register in Massachusetts and Wisconsin.
This is for you too.
Wisconsin.
This is the Boston Bubble.
Ah, thank you.
This is a little boutique magazine we put out quarterly, and this is
so dope.
because of this tech and innovation. Tech and innovation doesn't really represent all communities here. This does. So this is like kind of smashing the so-called tech and innovation sector. But yeah, you are actually one of the first people. This is the second one. So we're not huge people. It really is this small.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. All right, can we get a quick picture?
Yeah.
By the big city.
I already got one. Snapchat too? How much are you doing at one time?
No, that's Facebook Live. And we're at 216 on Facebook Live. Chris Faraone.
Cool. That was awesome.
Thank you. And we said the 14th, November 14th?
Yeah. It's perfect actually. 100%. I go to I have to pick up a prescription in West Roxbury every 4th Tuesday, so I can always just swing there first.
But that's the second Tuesday, November 14th?
For me, it's every 4th.
Every 4th.
It falls on this one. Not the 1st, just every 4th.
We got you. 6 a.m.
Cool.
Thank you. I get hugs. Appreciate you.
See ya. That was great.